The world of sports. Mr. Dapo Daramola is here, and we're looking at the UEFA Champions League. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yesterday was an explosive one.
Well, as expected, in fact, the last 2 days, really, if you consider the fact that Chelsea, as a big team, that has been in the semi-finals a couple of times and been in the final, was always going to either be, the second in their group, or it could have even gone in that way. They could have lost out. If Valencia had won, and it went the way it went between Bayern Munich and Bayern Leverkusen and Genk, Racing Genk, the Belgian club, it could have just been that Chelsea will be out of the Champions League. So for me, I think what we have seen in the last 2 days in Europe shows that somehow the so-called small clubs, are closing up fast. The gap, between the big clubs and the small clubs, is closing up. And, because FC Basel, of course, ensuring that Manchester United did not, qualify for the next round. And a team like Man City did not do themselves any good because they didn't start well. They lost matches they ought not to lose. And that did not help their cause in any way. So for me, overall, it wasn't the best of outing for the English club sides, the way it had been over the years.
So
where
despite the fact that Manchester City beat by 2 goals,
yeah, it didn't work for them. It wasn't enough because going into that match, they knew clearly, unlike the Chelsea game, if Chelsea could have won, what it meant was Chelsea could have determined their own fate. Unfortunately, Manchester United and Manchester City could not determine their own fate. Now, if Villarreal, going into that game yesterday in that group, so far Villarreal, will have defeated, so far Napoli, the Italian club, defeated the Spanish club Villarreal, then whatever happens, at Man City's stadium, nothing could have changed.
We have the results on the screen there. Lyon 7 goals to 1. Beating Dynamo at home, 7 goals to 1.
Yeah, well, Lyon has always been one of those consistent club sides in Europe. They've always come, and done well. In fact, don't forget, there was a time when they had the likes of Florent Malouda, Michael Essien, and yet, they were doing fantastically well at that time. So, I mean, they were semi-finalists at some point. It was AC Milan that dumped them out in that particular season. So, for me, I think you must expect that a club like that will always do well in Europe because they have the experience. Real Madrid, it could have been a different story because 2 goals, and it was quite funny. Ajax scored 2 goals, and they were fantastic goals. Somehow, the referee got it wrong, and that is why this issue of not only goal line technology, but do we bring in the idea, what is done in basketball, where you can take a second look, and then before you take a final decision. And I think that has to come into football, because football also is a passionate and emotional game. It's so demanding on the fans, and when you lose out, not because you have not done your part, but because the referee just got it wrong.
But when you consider, while we're still talking this, when you consider the amount of people involved in the play, going back to take a look before a decision, wouldn't that, what happens to the 4?
They have 4 officials, but again, we are not getting it right, so that means it's not enough. So that means there must be, we must move on. Okay, it reminds you of what happened in the World Cup qualifiers between Ireland, Republic of Ireland against France. France ought not to go to the World Cup, and Nemesis caught up with them. They did badly at the World Cup. In fact, they were in disarray because they qualified for the World Cup. They stole that game. Otiel, of course, used his hand to score a goal, and the referee overlooked. They looked the other way. If they had checked, if they had gone for a second look, that would have proven that that's not a goal, and possibly the Republic of Ireland will have gone to the World Cup.
Okay.
So the same way, Ajax, are out of the Champions League because of the referees, inadequacy. They scored 2 goals, and that could have changed the dynamics of the game.
Yeah.
Real Madrid, eventually scored, the first and then drew the second. So for me, it wasn't the best. It was unfortunate, that Ajax are out. FC Basel, they've always done well in the Champions League. People have forgotten that when they had, Sebastian Gross, as their coach, that was in the 2002-2003 season. They did very, very, very well. They had a pair of brothers. They had 2 brothers, Murat and Akan Yakin. They are of Turkish origin, but they pledged their allegiance to play for Switzerland, and they did very, very well in that season. And so FC Barcelona, for me, it's not a major surprise. They might be coming from so-called a small club, but they've always done well when they come to Champions League. So the only unfortunate thing is that for me, Man U has not been convincing at all at the Champions League through the 6 games. They were not convinced. There was no particular game you could say Man U dominated. I mean, I remember the game against Hotel Galati, the Romanian club side. It took them to have 2 unfortunate penalties, before Man U could beat that team. On that night. So for me, Man U definitely not one of their best seasons.
This season's Champions League, we have two major casualties.
For me, Man City will not be a casualty just because I mean they're coming to the Champions League really for the first time, so they are very inexperienced. Yes, they have. The only reason why it's a big news, if Man City maybe 4 or 5 years ago did not qualify for the Champions League, next round, it would not have been a big deal. But it's a big deal today because they spent that's the most expensive, lineup you have in the world, and that's why it's a big
some
issue.
of their players had played in the Champions League before.
Well, that's why I said
would be a plus.
It doesn't work that way necessarily because this competition has its own dynamics. It has its own and it takes your experience sometimes to see you through. You must have gone through different. Let me tell you, the moment Chelsea was going to face Valencia, a lot of people have already said, "Oh, Chelsea will," somehow experience will see them through because they've been at this stage over and over and over again. But for Man City, they've not been there. This is the first time. It's a different feel. Even for the fans themselves, they were seeing their team, something like a dream, come true. So let them live in that fairy tale world, that fantasy world. It has happened this season. Maybe next season they'll begin to get their acts together. Don't forget, they've been assembling this particular team for the past 3 or 4 seasons. Johan Eriksson was there, did his best. So they've had a couple of coaches, who have done their best at some point. And so Mark Hughes was there at some point. So they've been trying to put this together for a long time. And finally, the team seems to be gelling. They may, I've said it before, that they may win, the Premiership this season. It won't be a big surprise. But they've been knocking the door for the past, 3 or 4 seasons now. So it's possible they may win the Premier League, but the Champions League experience for them, it may take 2, 3, 4 more years before they come around.
Okay, just before we go, they are the last 4: Olympique Lyon, FC Basel, CSK Moscow, and Napoli. These are the last 4.
And Napoli's story is so funny. Of course, they were in the 3rd division, a big team before. Don't forget, I followed that team very much in the late 80s. When they had Diego Armando Maradona, they had some fantastic players, and things were going. They won the Scudetto out of the blues, and they were that team. And somehow they lost it. The mafia involvement and many other things. They lost money. Money was not coming in. As long as the government was clamping down on the mafia group, they were not able to pump money into Napoli, and somehow they lost it. And one film director, while reading the papers in the aircraft, saw that Napoli, was needed somebody to buy it up, and he just spent very mega money, and they picked up the club, picked up a coach, and somehow but the bottom line, they were able to piece very intelligent, effective players together, and the whole story is changing, because and for me, for the fact that they have even gone this far in the Champions League. Not because, with a rich history, but for a club that has been troubled for a couple of years, you want to say that they've done, really, really good. And even if they don't move on to the next level, it's fine. At least this time around, we have 3 Italian clubs, doing very well in Champions League. Inter Milan, for me, were not too convincing. But overall, at least we have AC Milan, Inter Milan, and we have Napoli in the next
still
round.
have Chelsea and Arsenal.
Well, Chelsea, Arsenal, I hope they'll be. Arsenal, I don't know. It depends on who comes their way next. If it is any of the big clubs, then Arsenal will be out for me, really. I don't see them beating either Barcelona. They don't have the capacity. It's not about. They have the history, but they do not have the mentality at this point. And until they get to that point, they must be able to cross, that hurdle mentally before, for me, they will get set. Chelsea is the only English side that I feel, not because I'm a Chelsea fan, but somehow over the years They've shown that consistency.
They let the cat out of
no. They've shown that. No. It's about consistency.
Okay.
It's about consistency, and I think one, they have very experienced players, they have very matured players, and they seem to be getting their acts together again. Okay. Like I said, I'm sure they will go far in the Champions League, definitely. In the league, they may end second or third. Like I said, if they win the league this season, it's going to be a miracle.
Okay.
But overall, I think Chelsea will do England proud.
Okay, back home here, just we're out of time, but back home here, 2011 appears not to be a very good year for Nigerian sports.
That's the way. I mean, the people in the glass house will tell you that it's not the best for Man United.
I didn't say Nigerian football. I said Nigerian sports.
I know. I'm telling you that those guys. Oh, sorry, when I said glass house. Okay, those guys in our sports will say, "Oh, look abroad. It's not the best for Man United. It's not the best for a club like Man City with all their money." But it's unfortunate. You see, we consistently plan to fail. And I can assure you, 2012, I'm predicting now, 2012 will be a terrible year for Nigerian sports. Not because, I can tell you even 2013. Because for you to win, for you to win any major tournament in the world, it takes you 4 years to prepare, especially the Olympics. Let me tell you, the moment the English team won the bid, to host the Olympics in 2012, they've been putting their acts together.
Right.
They've been putting their house in order. That is what we never do.
All right, thank you very much.
And so don't expect any miracle. I can see something that those are talking to people for money and all that. It is the money they will siphon. The money they will use this tournament, as a conduit, pipe to siphon. Not money that will put athletes on the path of success. And until we begin to, let's have a holistic policy to develop sports in this country.
Right.
As long as we don't have that, we will continue to fail, and there's nothing anybody can do about it.